Good morning. It's podcast day number 3. We're super excited for the 3rd episode of Do More Good. And I'm really thrilled because one of not only my favorite humans, but one of the best event planners in this entire community is here with me today, Nicole Hammons. And I'm so thankful that you agreed to come join me. I just learned this. I didn't know this about Nicole, but I do know she dislikes public speaking a tremendous amount. I learned that from her over the many years of working together. She does not like to public speak. So I did not know that it was actually a condition of her contracts, though. So she's going out on a limb for me today, Nicole, and I appreciate that so much.
Just you.
So, Nicole, tell us, obviously, I know you mostly through Boys and Girls Club. That was where we met and have worked together the most, but that's not all you do. In fact, you are an entrepreneur, you're a mom, a wife, and now you also are on the Excel Foundation board. So incredibly involved and committed to community, and I'm so thankful for that. I need more people like you in our community, and just so much appreciate that. So tell us a little bit about your family and your business, the Wine House.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about Nicole.
Sure. My husband's from here, so we moved here after college. So we've been here for a while, since 2008. So I think I can count myself as a local. I have 2 little kids, Avery and Rowan, 12 and 10. Busy. Avery's competitive gymnast, which is an interesting lifestyle. A lot of moms do soccer, so they can it's kind of the same, travel all the time. Our son Rowan is really into basketball now, so we're doing AAU and starting a little bit of travel with that. We own Living CDA Real Estate, so we own a real estate company, and I do the marketing and some of the operations. And then on top of it, we own the Wine House, so run day-to-day kind of operations, schedules, buying, all the things. And it's been a lot of fun, I think, dabbling in things. I've learned over the years that I love projects that have an end date. I think that's where I really thrive now, if you had to, pick something. So that's events. I mean, you have, you beginning to end, and then you're like, okay, next thing. So that's where I found the most joy, I think, in experience now, is that I know kind of more what I want to do or where I like to be, and kind of try and make my life fit in that.
Absolutely. That's awesome. In fact, I love the end date thing, because you're a project person too. I know that's about you. And so do you find that when you're doing your projects, that if you set a date for yourself, like when Wine House was opening and you were building cabinets and shelving and all of the things that you did in order to make that happen, was the fact that you were waiting to get the doors open? Was that like obviously it's compelling, motivates you, but...
Wine House was interesting because we bought the building right before COVID. And so we were like, well, crap, now what do we do? So we just kept going. We did a lot of the work ourselves. And so when everyone was home from school and work, it was kind of a unique situation for us where we could leave our home and go to this project. And we did all the work ourselves from the drywall down. And our kids got to come, the kids painted the garage. And so it was kind of a fun family project where we weren't trapped in our own home. We still got to do something that felt like we were doing something.
Right.
And we still were isolated. So it was kind of a good combination. I think Connor and I learned more skills over that project than anything else. At the time, you couldn't find people to do work because everything was slow. And so I literally YouTubed how to build countertops. And I built the countertops with Connor at the Wine House. We messed him up a little bit, but it's fine. But I think just being resourceful, and I feel like my kind of motto, and especially with nonprofits or events or things, is it's just everything's figure-outable. So I don't panic when things don't go right, or we don't have counters. Okay, well, we'll just make them, I guess.
In fact, don't you think that the better thing is not panicking? The most important thing is maybe just expecting that something's going to go wrong. I mean, it's inevitable. Something is not going to work like you expect it to.
No. And I love a plan. I love to check the boxes and make the sheet. And it's so satisfying to cross it off. But I also know that
not like that.
It will not be, this will not be what it looks like in the end. And so I think coming to the realization that that's expected every time is really going to help you in all things, where even with my kids, they're like, do you want a birth plan? And I'm like, no, because if it doesn't go that way, I'm going to panic. And so I've come a long way. I think it's just being able to pivot and have a backup to your backup. Or in this world, I think that it's connections. So like if your vases didn't come in, but my friend Missy who does events, they have those, so I can borrow from her. Or, having friends within the industry that you're in and knowing that they'll always kind of bail you out. So that's kind of a good fallback.
I actually wasn't even going to talk about that today, but I think it's a good segue because you talk about having relationships in the business, and sometimes the nonprofit world can be incredibly competitive. But you have done a great job of cultivating wonderful relationships with other nonprofits. You mentioned Missy, IYR. And so what do you think the key is to quality, like real being able to reach out and say, hey, I'm in a bind, not just being cordial and friendly to one another, but for you to be an asset to one another, because she undoubtedly knew she could do the same thing.
Right.
Hey, if I'm in a bind, I'm going to reach out to Nicole because she's going to help me.
Yeah. I think you not only like as a business need to be better for the community, because all of the nonprofits locally lift it as a whole. And so you might be more specialized in one area, or like with the Boys and Girls Club, it's just kids. So helping all of that same demographic in our community lifts everyone. And so being kind of competitive is a little bit, but a lot of it's ego. And I think you have to let a lot of that go. Do I love raising a lot of money? You bet. Do I like being like, oh, we did? Yes. But again, it's not my money. It's not for me. It's for the kids or for, animals or whoever it is. It's not for you. And so I think losing the ego is a big part of it. But having those connections where you're not just friends inside of work, but outside, like I golf with Missy, or we go on vacation, or, I know Vanessa outside of stuff like that. So I think that just making those personal connections, but also remembering if they need your help and you're not going to help them, you someday are going to need help.
Right.
And then what? They'll be like, oh, remember that time I asked you and you said no, here we are. And you're like, dang it.
I really could have done a better job of investing from the beginning.
But I think you just have to be a good human about it. We're not in it for us. It's not my personal business. It's not my money. It's not my building. They're not all my kids. My kids go there, but
that's true. Because you think about the club, Boys and Girls Club. Obviously, those kids, there's some crossover, right? So you're going to have kids that are at the club but that are also receiving services through IYR. And then, some of the kids from, you mentioned Vanessa at Children's Village. So then you have Children's Village kids who undoubtedly are also benefiting through IYR and club kids. So just recognizing that the greater good is that we're servicing these kids and the needs of them. So in the club, I know, how many kids are between the two clubs? Do you know right now?
I don't know right now.
Yeah.
Hundreds. A couple hundred. I've been there since December.
Yeah.
But in the summer it kind of doubles, but they serve so many depending on time of year, what's going on. Teens kind of come in and come out based on school schedules and sports and all the things. So if they have practice, they go to practice. If they don't, they can come with us. So I think that is just a great place, especially for middle schoolers who kind of have this weird in-between life where they want to be adults, but they don't realize being adults not that much fun.
It can be fun. Being an adult can be fun. So what actually drew you to nonprofit? I mean, obviously you're entrepreneurial minded.
Sure.
And so nonprofits can tend to be that way as well, but not always. There's definitely some stark contrasts between the entrepreneurial spirit and the nonprofit. So what drew you into nonprofits?
At the time, I was working out of town, and I had my mother-in-law was on the board at Boys and Girls Club.
I've never made that connection. Oh, that's awesome.
Before I was married, and then they used to have the club at Lakes Middle School, where my father-in-law was the principal. So I feel like it's kind of like in our family. And then when I went there as a kid when Ryan Davis, who's my first boss there, was his first summer at Lewiston. So that's kind of a funny that he worked there and I went there. Not to date you, Ryan. Sorry. So we had that connection. And then my friend Marnie worked on the auction. And so we went to an auction with my mother-in-law. And then my husband and I were both like, okay, we now have kids. I think when you have kids, it kind of changes your perspective on where you should be spending your time or doing things, and your life changes. Like we weren't going out all the time, kids had diapers and they were in school, and so we went there and saw what they were doing and thought, like, this is so great that it affects so many kids at one time. And so we wanted to be part of that. I love being creative. I went to art school. My mom said it would never do anything for me. Here we are. Mom. So I think that part of my brain with nonprofit works so well, because I don't want to do the same thing over and over, or I can think outside of the box or come up with different things. And so that really works in this sphere of events and people, and day-to-day is different all the time, and that's where I love it. I don't want the same thing. And so got into that. And really just the last 6 years was doing all the things.
Well, and you slayed it. You had helped. The cool thing about the club is, you mentioned Marnie, and the event was really had a great solid foundation.
It did.
And then when you came on board, it was kind of like next level, right? The event really went from just this really solid, raising pretty substantial amount of money for an event in our community, bringing in a lot of community members. Obviously Boys and Girls Club has a far-reaching, impact. So it goes like across all the lines. It's hard to find somebody who can't see value in investing in Boys and Girls Club, and the volume of kids that are reached through it make it a very impactful organization in our community. But I would love to hear a little bit about what you think maybe the tipping point was. How did the event go from really solid and just this, kind of foundational to the crazy success that it has been, especially over the last 4 or 5 years. But I mean, it has just really skyrocketed to next level. So what do you think the tipping point was?
I think it's a combination. I think when we were doing well, right before we had our doubled our amount of money we raised, which was amazing, we had the Coeur d'Alene Club open. So I think we just had more reach and more kids, and we could show the community they could do more, given the opportunity. And so with that, there was twice as many kids. We had a club in Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls. And so that really widened the horizon, I think, of people that were involved. People like big buildings sprout up, and you're like, what is going on? Especially East Sherman side. Not a lot happens over there.
Yep.
And then I think the board they work really hard. I've learned so much from them. I don't think I could ask for a better group of people to be surrounded by.
Yep.
And they've really stepped up too. So them going out in the community and making more asks. And then I think the industry in general in our area has changed in those years. More corporations, people are making more money, people have moved here, which I know is a hot topic.
It's the truth,
but
though.
It grows business that can then give back to support the community. So I think all those things happened. I think we did a few things different along the way. We've learned. When I first took the job, my predecessor moved to Africa. So I had 2 hours with her, and then that was it. So it was kind of like, okay, well, we're going to wing it. Luckily, I had Marnie for the first couple of years to try and do events with. But the rest of it was kind of like I didn't know any better. And I think that's kind of a blessing sometimes, is there's not one certain way or the way it's always been done. So it's just like, well, let's just try some things. And not all of it went well, but a lot of it did.
A lot of it did.
Had some weird ideas, and some of them, like hiding Easter eggs, and went great. And some of the things I was like, maybe we wouldn't do that again.
Well, I think that's where you learn. If everything goes great all the time, you don't learn a lot.
No.
You learn the most through the mistakes that you make. And you talked about the board, and you do have a powerhouse board. And so I think that actually it's a huge hindrance for some, not many, we'll say many organizations, that they have their boards they're not working boards. They're not super active. They like to kind of guide the ship, which is great. You need people to do that. And so how do you manage those expectations of your board members so that when they come on the board, they know that you have these, not requirements, but expectations. You're gonna solicit contributions. You're gonna fill tables. You're gonna be creative about maybe developing awesome live auction packages, because that's one thing that you have done such a great job of, is your auction packages are, some of them are events you only have access to at Boys and Girls Club. And so, what is that, what does that kind of look like for you in that development process with your, I mean, I know you're not actually developing the board necessarily, but you are there. I mean, you're regularly interacting with them, encouraging them, asking them. So how do you kind of manage those expectations from your board?
Yeah, I think my position's a little bit different than some boards where maybe if you're the development, you're not at the board meetings all the time, or you don't know them well enough that you could like call and have conversations or go to coffee. So I think that really making your own relationship with your board members really helps you. And then you feel confident to ask out if you need help for something, or, hey, I know you have this great connection. Is there any way you could do the ask? Because coming from someone they know is easier than a stranger. But I think coming prepared, my first year, I kind of didn't take my seat at the table, I guess. I mean, I didn't feel like that was my role yet. So I kind of sat on the side and listened, and I think some of them didn't even know my name for the first 6 to 8 months. But then when I got comfortable and felt more confident in what I was doing, or really felt passionate about a change, or can we do this, I think that especially with that board, because they're so predominant in the community, they've built business, you have to be prepared when you're going to make your pitch, or you get one shot the first time. So bring your notes, bring your facts, keep them updated. And then I think the rest of it, they want to help you because they feel your energy. They want to be engaged. They understand you're passionate about it. And so that really helps okay, we are, 6 months out. Let's work on this now because no one wants to do it in August. Learning those things too. Like, you don't want to be asking people in August. You want to be on your boat or in the sunshine. So let's do the work now. It's much easier for me later in the year. And then being comfortable asking. I think that sometimes the ask is the hardest part, especially with people that you feel are, I don't know, more in business or have companies, and you're kind of like, oh, well, I'm nervous to ask them. But
yeah, you maybe are intimidated by their stature over yours potentially.
But I think if you don't, what's the worst they're going to say? No.
Well, and if they're on your board, the expectation is that they are committed, at least to some degree, and investment, whether that's their own personal finances or their own personal experiences, or the expectation that they go and solicit some of those things on their own is it's a worthy conversation. Yeah. And I think that it's like warm call versus cold call. You mentioned that it's going to be way easier for, if I'm on your board and I know someone who has resources and capacity, it only makes sense that I would do the ask. I might even bring you along, right? Did you find that you went along with any of your board members when they were doing those things, or?
Yeah, I actually felt like I was very involved or included, I guess, that they would, even if it's just connecting you through email so that they know it's them from me and I have the details, or going to meet them or doing coffee or phone calls. I think that was a great experience that I felt like I was always included.
Yeah.
So when you came to event time or talking to donors and they tell you something that the board had talked about and you're like, I don't know what they're talking about. I never felt like I wasn't included in that. So I think that was great. It was a learning curve to find out, what to do, where to go, what to say.
Yeah, did you have to interject yourself sometimes into those conversations a little bit? Like, hey, if you would just include me. I mean, is that something that you're...
Sometimes, or afterwards, they'd be like, so we talked about this. I'm like, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
So I think educating both me and them, and then when you hear how they, especially when you're new, if you can go, and this is what I learned with Ryan, when I was new and I didn't know... your elevator pitch. I don't know what to say. Clearly, I don't like to talk in public. But hearing them talk over and over about the same things, then you can spread the same message. And I think if your board and your staff and everyone can be on the same page and spread the same message, that it's the most impactful. And so really making sure everyone feels included, because if the staff doesn't know you're going to do a remodel, but the board knows, and we don't know if we have the money, but they know, it just dilutes your impact. Yeah. And so making sure that everyone fully understands where we're going, what's our goal.
Continuity and messaging, I think, is really what you're getting at there. There's a key component where if we're on the same team, but we run into a potential donor at different places and you say one thing and I say a different thing, then they go, well, gosh, I was talking to Nicole and she said this, but now Rose said this. And how much connectivity is there really going on in that place? So I think you can damage your integrity by not being fully, I guess, communicative and letting everybody know what's actually on the agenda and the docket. So that's good. I love it. We're gonna. You guys, again, back to your board. They're so invested, and it's kind of a rare treat. They've been around
a long time, so they know at the beginning, they know the problems, they know where we didn't do well, and now how we can do better.
Yep.
If we have ideas, and they're like, well, we did that before, kind of this way, but it didn't quite work. So the history, I think, is so valuable.
Absolutely.
And then they're just so passionate about what we do. I think for me to get them to help with what I needed, if you can give them a direct task versus going to a meeting saying, well, we need to do these things.
Yeah.
But so saying, can you take this on, or can you reach out to this person? And then I feel like they have a duty. Then they're more like, okay, I can do the task versus,
right.
Well, we talked about it, but there was no action steps.
And then you can follow up with them too, right? You can be like, hey, did you do this one particular thing that I have on your agenda? Yeah, that's good. What about the event? I mean, again, because you've created just this really fun kind of must-go event. Yeah. What's kind of your thought process for the overall feel or timeline? I mean, when you're thinking about, hey, this is what our event looks like, what do you think? What is your kind of guide for, we want it to be this long, we want it to have this many elements, we want it to, are you thinking about all of that stuff?
Yeah, I have a sheet of paper that...
Checklist.
My checklist.
Yep.
Not only the checklist of all the things that you have to have in the room, like raffle tickets and flowers, that we've done them or bought them or ordered them or whatever, but I also have one that's 6 to 9 months out, 3 months out, 2 months out, week out, all the things, because when you've done it so long, I think you know what works well and you know what you messed up. So then you make sure that gets on your list. And then it makes my brain not feel so crazy knowing okay, we're set for this, gonna do this. But I think that when you have people come to an event, you just want them to have a good time. You want it to be memorable and have fun and leave and not just end that night. But then the next week you're with your friends and you're like, oh, we went to that event last week and we had so much fun and the kids were so cute. And so I think that when you get people to come and they can just keep spreading your message, that really helps you. And then it's someone's time. So I think that is part of it, where we're all busy and it's usually a weekend or a night and you're probably away from your kids and you need to pay a babysitter and you probably bought a dress because that's just what we like to do. It needs to be worth all of that to come again. And so I think memorable, easy check in, check out. It's not stressful on them. They get fed. Things behind the scenes, of course, go wrong and go crazy, but your goal is that no one else knows.
Right.
So I think that part, as long as they get there, they have fun, they remember your message.
Yep.
And then can spread that for you too. So
again, I don't think we can say it enough, that expectation that something will obviously go awry. There's no way that it won't. We have hundreds of people in a room and it's live and all of that stuff. And so being prepared to smile through it.
Yeah.
And check in and check out. That's,
oh my gosh,
it's a pretty regular stumbling block for a lot of people. How have you perfected that? I mean, obviously software, which we don't have to delve into the specifics about software, but what have you done to help kind of alleviate the stress of the check-in and the checkout process?
First of all, good internet. So in some venues, you have your own internet or you have the internet of the venue. And so you can double check that you can get your own internet for just your event so that you're not with everyone that's also staying there and there's probably other people. Software, of course, don't use Excel. It's never going to work for you. I know you want to save money and I'm the cheapest person alive in events, the cheapest. But no, software is worth every penny. But I spent a lot of time before the event going through making sure your tables are filled with people. So if they don't have all their guests in, reaching out. Some people, I'm sorry, I probably emailed you 900 times, but I really need your guests. That way when they come, it's easy. They know where to be. They know who's bidding. Their name's on their thing. It just feels like we're prepared. And then we started pre-check-in, which now you can do in most software. But that day, send out an email. They can check themselves in, put their credit card information, which is the long part. And then we have FastPass for check-in. So if you've already done all that, you go to the side, you get your book, you go. So you're golden. Cocktails in line. I've done a lot of that.
We like that.
Checkout, again, you can do mobile. So we'll send an email. It makes it super easy. If you did your paddle or you bought a silent auction, it'll show up. You can just push checkout. You're done. If you want to go to the front, we're there, an hour. I've done before where we have a big board with all of the bid numbers and you circle if you won, because a lot of times in silent, you don't know. You walk away and then you're like, did we win something? That way you don't have to wait in line. Emails is the easiest for receipts. I don't print at events because the printer will die or it won't connect or it's not worth it.
Without fail.
I'm happy to mail it to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So I think those things, but also knowing your guests. I think if it's your first year, it's tough, but a lot of times you have the same guests. And so I always know that these group of people want to sit together or they want to sit next to this table. So I think learning those things, but it's hard to pass that on, which I learned last year. Because I was like, how do you tell them? How do you leave notes behind this? Say like, well, this family and this family like to sit together on this side of the room. But these people want to sit here with these people, but they never buy a table. Like, I don't know how to give that to someone.
And I think part of that is just the process, the learning curve. Yeah. And there's, anytime there's change in leadership or really any teams, there's going to be some sort of information loss. You just can't help it because so much of it is intuitive. It's like what we do. Yeah. We try to educate our support team as best we can about the personality and the like presence that you carry, what you bring into a space. It's hard to teach it. You have to learn it. It's definitely something that you have to walk through it in an effort to get there. So yeah, being able to, just acknowledge there's going to be some information loss and then hopefully the guests that have gotten used to, hey, Nicole always made sure I sat next to this person and did this thing. Hopefully they'll have some grace. Yes. Yeah. Please have grace when there's leadership changes and that kind of thing. So, and obviously more often than not, there is going to be. I mean, we're dealing with people that are coming to support worthy causes and they're generous and want to contribute to community and society as a whole. And so more often than not. So if you're worried about that, don't get too worried about that because there's a lot of grace. There's a lot of grace. So with the software, are you an advocate of paper bid sheets or do you like online bidding for the silent auction in your room? How much technology do you like to use?
I think it depends on your demographic.
Yeah.
Because we talk about this a lot when we plan. I personally like paper bid sheets because there's a paper trail. I can find it. I can look back easily. People, again, if you're using Wi-Fi or internet, but I feel like at an event, my dress does not usually have pockets. So I don't want to pack my phone and do this while I'm trying to talk to people and my drink. And I just think it's kind of rude when I go to something like that. I want to be with the people that I'm there. I mean, I washed my hair. My kids are not here. I want to hang out with the people I like.
I washed my hair. That counts for something.
And so I don't be on my phone. And then it's kind of a distraction. But I think also when you're paper bidding, you're moving through the room. So you get to see people you haven't seen or you meet people you haven't met before because you're trying to bid on the same thing. And it builds this kind of camaraderie when two people are really wanting something. And so they're back and forth. And it builds excitement. And when you're on your phone, I feel like it kills that. We talk about all the pros and cons of this. We hash it out pretty regularly. And that relationship piece is something that, we talk about it, that you see the people but I don't think I've ever really put a lot of consideration into meeting new people in that position, but you absolutely do. Yeah. Yeah. I know 2 years ago, there was a beautiful Ben Joyce painting and Cameron Chestnut was bidding and I'm running the event. So I'm telling my husband, go bid on that. We need to bid on that. I really want that. So they're back and forth, but then it ends and then you're in for us, we move over to dinner. And so then you see that person and you're like, so then you're bidding on something else. So you're bidding them up. It creates this fun energy. And I feel like half of live auction is the people egging on their friends, right? So you're like, Rose, you want to go to Honduras, or I'm going to bid you. I want the dog, all the things. And I think that is what really makes it fun. Yeah. I've been to live auctions where it's kind of silent and I'm watching and I'm like, oh my gosh, so painful for you. And there's no energy. And I think that really kills the fun out of it. I mean, we're all there to give our money for a great cause and support something, but it should be fun.
It should be fun.
It should be a good time to write large checks and be like, oops.
I meant to stop bidding, but then Nicole egged me on, and there I was spending more than I planned to, because that's always the goal. We always want people to spend more money than they plan to when they walk into the room. And with the live auction, how do you decide, like, how are you cultivating your live auction items?
We've been lucky. We had a lot of things before I got there that amazing donors over and over that are happy to let us have houses or trips or, things. But it's hard too, because sometimes you have things that have done really well and then you've had them so long they kind of don't. And so it's a really hard conversation because you're so grateful that of course you would give us your condo or your whatever.
Yeah.
But we need to take a break for a little bit.
We call it hibernation.
Yeah.
We're going to put that one into hibernation for a little while because, to your point, how many times can you sell it, especially when it used to bring 5,000 and then it brings 3,000 and now it's only bringing 2,000 and you go, okay, it's probably time to remove that for a little bit and then we'll reintroduce it in a couple years and it'll probably
do better,
bring $5,000 again. Yeah.
It's also hard as the planner because you feel bad if they're amazing things they're giving you and they're not going very well. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to buy it just because I'm uncomfortable. So you don't want it to devalue what they have either. And it's a lot of work to give up something that's yours to arrange the dates and the cleaners and all the things. And so I think both the people's time, it has to be worth both people's time. So it goes the same with if they had something and then, they've done it and they feel it's time to hold back for a couple years. It's not something they want to tell you either, but you understand both sides and you're like, I get it. It's totally fine. Other ways we find things, I think just different connections. You meet people randomly or your board members meet people randomly on vacation and then they want to be engaged. And so I think you find those kinds of things. Your personal connections, you ask a lot of favors. So I'm sure now I have friends that are like, please stop calling me.
How many people are really happy that you are no longer
I know. Right.
in the official capacity?
Yes. I don't know. I think just also being so grateful for the opportunity. And so if someone does something for you, even if they give you $50 and you're like, cool, bro, thanks. There's no thank you. There's no follow-up. I think that it doesn't bode well for you that you, one, may have turned them off when your capacity was only $50. But if they'd been engaged, I mean, down the road, who knows? But I think any amount of donation you should be just really grateful for. And so the thank yous and, no one wants to write. I mean, we have like 600 people. I didn't want to write 600 thank yous, but I did it. Right. Because they showed up for you. And I think that you have to really show them that mattered. Yeah. And so if you feel like you came, you spent no dollars or $1 million. Yeah. But no one said, thanks for coming. Or we really like to have you. Or even here's how your money or coming has impacted us. Like, what does that look like? Yeah. Without that, I think you lose a lot of people.
For sure. And what about, I love what you said about the $50 that it grows. The potential is, and maybe it won't ever. Right. Maybe $50 will be all the capacity they have forever. Right. But there is always the possibility that when maybe they're starting a new business or maybe they are young and, you think about just in the 6 years that you led the charge, there were people that were coming 6 years ago that are in largely different financial situations now that before it was could hardly afford to buy the ticket to attend, but they wanted to invest. And now they're the ones that are buying these, multiple thousands of dollars worth of live auction items or paddle race contributions.
And I don't think it just comes from dollars either. Like, even if they're the $50 donor, but then they volunteer, or they come in and teach a class, or they spread the information. I think all of that is valuable. It's not just dollars. And I know nonprofits, that's how we function. We're not federally funded. We have to have that part. But we can't do it without volunteers and, people that come in and make sandwiches for lunch or play dodgeball. All those pieces matter. And so I think that that's part to remember too, that if, they came and they did $50, that's what they have now. Yeah, a lot of people are in this weird entrepreneur life, and sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. I mean, all the seasons change, right?
Absolutely.
Real estate, building, all of it.
Yep.
And so just keeping them engaged, and that can change from coming to events, or it can be volunteering, or, if they're really good at bicycles, they can teach them to tune up their own bicycle. All of that matters. And so I think remembering that part, it's not just money. Yeah. It impacts kids all along the way. So if we can just keep doing that, we have Roseanne, who is the best volunteer of all time. My 7-year-old son, who's 7, she taught them all to knit. He would knit in the car on car rides. just skills they would never do. They play bingo, like all the fun things, and they love her. So I think
that's amazing.
You can have that impact. You're not paid, it's your own time, but it fills your heart at the same time. And so
Absolutely.
all of it matters. That's
incredible. Do you think that there's like a magic sauce? Like, how do you get the people in the room? How do you find those people? You know, where do you, how? Tell us.
I don't know the magic sauce. Advertising, of course, people have to see it to know. I think it's important to try not have everyone's events on the same day, which has been interesting some of the years with COVID and changing dates and seasons and the weather being weird and, trying to carve out your set date or consistency. I think for at least our event, it's the same 1 or 2 weekends every year. So that's what it is.
In September, you better mark your calendar. Yep.
And then I think they know what to expect. So before me, they used to do themes. Like there was like race cars and all these things that were very, my daughter would say, cringe. And now we have kind of the same flow. It works well. So you get to go pretty, semi-formal and go out. And so I think knowing what you're supposed to do or what to do helps so you don't feel like you're floundering. Social media, advertising, sponsors, having them help you advertise to their staff, or if you can, proud sponsor and put flyers up or...
You guys have always done a really great job too with your sponsorships. So they've been creative and fun and so how do you kind of come up with those?
I joke that I will pretty much sponsor anything. Everything has a price. We even have a bathroom sponsor, which is fun. I think it's fun when you can do quirky things. But I mean, businesses are giving you money. So yes, it's for the goodness of the community, but also it's a business. And so being able to put their logo on whatever and show that they were there and they support is a big deal. So I get totally at both sides. It needs to work for them and for us.
Yeah.
But I think having the relationships with the people who make the decisions. And so the first year is new, like you're meeting people, but then you get in this rhythm with them. And instead of emailing them and asking them like, hey, auction's coming up, would you guys be interested? It's more like, hey, I saw you went to Hawaii. How are your kids? You know them. And so it's like having a friendly, I wouldn't say we're friends, but we're friendly conversation about their life, my life, what we're doing. We'd love to have you. We were so glad you came last year and you guys did these things. So I think remembering or looking back in your software, where they impacted and then reminding them why it made a difference.
Feels like there's a thread here, Nicole. There's a thread here that it's, whether it's your board or your donors, volunteers, or your sponsors, it's all about relationship. And that being in contact with that person about things that have their trip to Hawaii versus always about the club, right? Always about the sponsorships or the events. Being actually invested in that community as a whole, because if all you're doing is, if I communicate with you once a year and it's, hey, and in fact, I do sometimes text you, hey, I'm in a bind. Do you have any thoughts or ideas on this for this other client? Like, hey, my client who this thing just fell apart and we're kind of floundering. Can you help me?
Yeah.
And if the only time I ever talked to you was then, you would be like, why is she bugging me again? But that's not, but because relationship allows us to have those conversations without having to like predicate it with anything. We can just have that conversation because we know that we're going to have the gymnastics conversation in a day or two. Right. Yeah.
I think there's a book Gary Vaynerchuk has. It's called Jab, Jab, Punch. So that's what it is saying. It's like saying you have to give something to ask for something.
Yeah.
So you need more gives than asks. So if you can make that relationship where you're not always asking for something all the time, they're more likely to give when you need it. So I think there's a big part of that too.
Jab, jab, punch. Okay.
Yeah. It's fun.
Yeah, sounds good.
Marketing world folks. But
are you, well, actually, I was going to ask you about some more logistics and stuff like that. But I think what I'm more curious about is there like a major pitfall that you say, hey, whatever you do not do this thing? Or maybe the opposite side of that is whatever you do, make sure that you do this thing. Like what are the Nicole's must-dos for quality event?
Don't do so many random things. I think when I see when you go to other events, and you're like, oh, not negative, just like as an event planner, whatever, all the things go through your mind.
You never shut it off, yeah.
Or you're like, oh my gosh, bless their soul, they did that. Because you know how much work it was. But I see a lot of overspending on things that don't matter. And I think, again, it goes back to I'm super cheap in my fundraising life. I'm sure my husband wishes it would translate to regular life. If there's a free shipping coupon or like buy one, get one, I have found it. But I think the event should look nice, but not at the expense of raising money for what matters. And so should you have like your sponsored items? Sure. But do you need like 900 roses in a room? No. Should there be something? Yeah. So I think it's finding that balance for me of not overspending on what doesn't matter. Minus food, I think last year I spent $10,000 total, which is for 600 people.
Unbelievable.
But also I've done things that would be my tips is to acquire things you can use over and over and over. So the 6 years before, for 4 years or 3 years, I'd buy sets of vases that I could every 4 years use over and over. 1 year we really wanted black matte vases, which you cannot find. I spray painted 300 of them in my backyard from the dollar store. So I think it's just being resourceful. I think seating charts, as much as I hate them, they make it work. Because then everyone's going to have a seat. You don't get that awkward group of people like, there's no more chairs because there's twos and ones. So I think those are, I hate doing them, but they're kind of a necessity at certain events. Some events, it doesn't matter, but sit down, dinner, formal auction, I think it has to be done.
Yep.
I think pre-check-in, pre-check-out with your phone makes a huge difference for us.
Yep.
Or knowing your people. So I know some people that we have that come aren't super tech savvy, so they don't do the pre-check-in, but they really don't like to wait in line. So I check them in, I have their stuff, and I just know when they get there, I hand them their things. But I think that's back to relationships or being prepared. Food is always a hot topic because let's be real, knowing you're going to an event, the food's not going to be great.
Right.
Because not a lot of options, and feeding 300 to 600 people is not easy.
It's not easy.
And so maybe have a snack before you come. Plan to get something afterwards.
Plan a nightcap. Yeah.
Eat a pit at 2 a.m. I think things I've really messed up are... Not really messed up. But if last minute table changes for guests, if you don't tell us, then it's a whole mess. And then you feel bad for the guest because you're like, well, your name's not on this, but this is you for the night. I'm so sorry. So those pieces, I think, matter to people when they come. You know who's coming. You can check them in. That makes them feel good. Yeah. And when that's kind of in chaos, then they're like, well, they don't know what they're doing. And that's like my biggest fear is that someone's walking around going, this is a shit show. Like, what is happening? And I'm like, I know.
I'm not, you don't have to tell me.
I know, but I'm going to smile.
This is a and then we smile through it.
Yes. We've had those days. But I think hiring like you, without you, we couldn't do it. I don't know who else would be up there. The people. Working beforehand together makes me feel a little less crazy. Like, bouncing ideas off you, like, do you think this is gonna work? Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Yeah, thank you for saying that.
Having your team, having a good team of people that you can laugh with and make mistakes with, and I've messed things up. We've not done videos at the right time. It's all graceful, right? We're like, but it's gonna be fine. We're not brain surgeons. We're not messing something up is not gonna be the end of the day. And I think letting that roll off and just moving on through. Yep. Is the biggest part. Grace for your team. Everyone's stressed out. So when you're stressed, they're stressed, and then you're cranky. No one's happy. Right. So they're not going to want to help you. And your guests feel it. Yeah. And you definitely don't want your guests to feel it. They need to think that everything is perfect. Yeah. Yeah. Print copies of everything. I was going to ask about paper. Tech doesn't always work out. Yeah. So I think having a backup to a backup to a backup. Yeah. Great. Absolutely. But mostly I think just giving everyone reminding yourself that everyone worked really hard to be here or to get us here.
Yeah.
And so you can't just say like, oh, well, the napkins don't match, which I do have a hard time letting go of things like that. But I would never let anyone else know.
Right.
So just letting it kind of go, be smooth,
Yeah.
as smooth as possible, and worry about it later.
I love to ask everyone kind of at the end of the show, I want to know, what's Nicole's big audacious dream? Like if you could, no time restraints, no financial restraints. It could be a community thing. It could be a personal thing. Like what's the big dream, the big audacious dream?
Just like right now in my life is like this crazy question, right? So I retired from the club, I don't know, in December. And now I'm kind of in that weird season of life. Like, what am I going to do? And so I have that opportunity, and I really feel like I have no idea. Spending time with my kids, because I think they're actually at an age where they want to hang out with me, which I think is rare. So I'm going to take that for what I can get. Eventually, I think doing like consulting on events would be kind of where I would go. Not that I would have to be the sole person doing all the things, but getting them the creative side and the organizing. I love, again, end dates and turning chaos into order. Like, I don't know why, but that's like my wheelhouse. Things that seem crazy or complicated, and then kind of dumbing it down to make it reasonable and doable. And so I think that a lot of things or events, that's the kind of piece they're missing.
Yeah.
Deadlines, due dates, order by dates.
Yeah, order by dates for sure. Yeah, for sure.
So I think that, or in my different life, I want like a mini farm and just want to play with the animals all day.
There's nothing wrong with that. I love that plan. That's awesome.
Goat yoga and dogs and all the things.
And then you could offer up really awesome live auction packages for people to come.
Yeah, come
and
and
hang out at the goats. Yes. That's so
My
great.
husband is listening going, no more animals.
Not right now, Connor. Give her some time. She needs some time.
Downtown house and goats. It's great.
Well, I'm so thrilled that you came and
Thank you.
spent some time with me, and that you shared your knowledge and your wisdom with our listeners, and I have learned so much from working alongside of you. It has been really fun for me too, because speaking about the creative side, I love that we can just, hey, what do you think about this? Let's with this the grace of maybe it's going to work, maybe it's not going to work,
Right.
and having the ability to just say, yeah, let's try it, knowing that it might not work, but it might be really successful. And that's fun. And a lot of times that grace doesn't exist. There's a lot of structure. There has to be structure. So we're not diminishing structure because it's critical. But it's just been a ton of fun to walk alongside you, and from the gala to the spring event and all of the things that have coincided with that. And it's one of my favorite events by far is the Boys and Girls Club event. And it has been largely due to your presence and just the kind of like confidence that you bring, but also knowing that it's going to be dialed because you have all your checklists and all of that. I have a tremendous amount of confidence when I walk in the room that if something goes awry, that it's going to be handled. We were working with our team last night. We were talking about how really once the event starts, I'm locked into this stage space. So, we might have an 8x16 platform, and I'm kind of locked there.
Yeah.
And so there's not a lot that I can do from that point. But when you're there, I know that whatever comes up, that whatever situation may arise, that it's going to be handled, and I'm going to be able to maintain my, the authority of the space and be able to continue to raise money, which is what I'm there to do, because you have it all handled. So there's a tremendous amount of, comfort for me walking into a room that you are leading the charge in. So yeah, it's awesome.
Doesn't always feel that way, but it works out that way.
Absolutely. That's events. So,
well, thanks so much for having me. It's been fun. I'm
Yeah.
excited for you and podcasting. So.
yeah, it's been a fun experience for sure. So appreciate you coming.
Yes.